Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Amicable Divorce Network podcast. My name is Tracy Ann Moore Grant. I'm the founder of the Amicable Divorce Network and your podcast host. If you've been following us, you know that season 2 is dedicated to going through our new book, Divorce Amicably, Your Roadmap to Resolution, where we take you step by step down the road of a divorce and help you work through each step that may come across your path. Today, I am joined by one of our members who does a lot of training for us at the Amicable Divorce Network, Tori Owens, and today our topic is intimate partner violence. Tori, thank you so much for writing this very important chapter and for joining me here today.
Thank you so much.
And I think first just introduce yourself to everybody. Who are you? What do you do? And what is your background in assisting victims of intimate partner violence?
Well, it's good to be here. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Tori Owens. I am a full-time therapist in North Georgia. So I'm based in Dahlonega, Georgia, but am open to all over Georgia because of lovely telehealth and all of that good stuff. So that's awesome. I'm also a parent coordinator / co-parent counselor. So I'm a registered neutral with the state of Georgia, and I use those mediation skills with the therapy skills to help high conflict co-parents work through lots of issues, whether that's just logistics or how to get, past some really difficult things to communicate better, right? That get in the way of those communication skills. So that's what I'm doing most of the time. And taking care of dogs and running around in the woods.
Yeah. A little bit of fun stuff.
Absolutely.
But Tori does a ton of training where she trains our members on how to handle some difficult issues that sometimes come up in divorce. And the one that we're going to talk about today is intimate partner violence, also called domestic violence, also called domestic abuse. And so I think the first thing that I want to point out just at the offset is that if anybody feels unsafe,
yes,
we are not in any way forcing you to resolve your matters outside of the court system. The conversation, that we want to have and make sure that people are aware of is that it can be handled outside of the court system with professionals that have proper training and with some of the benefits of telehealth and, being able to do things on Zoom remotely, because sometimes having a court proceeding could actually worsen the situation.
Yes.
And so that really is a personal call, and anybody that's, listening to this, consult with your divorce team on what is best for you. But we are just going to talk briefly about how some of these difficult issues can be resolved outside of court. So first of all, let's talk about the terminology. In what is domestic violence? It is a big term with a lot of under definitions.
I think in the beginning of my work, because I've spent about 20 years at a domestic violence shelter here in North Georgia as an advocate, children's advocate, shelter manager, all the things. And then at the end, that definition changed slightly over those 20 years, right? And what it means now. So initially it began what was in abuse that was in the confines of an intimate relationship, romantic relationship. Now, over time, what's happened is that now encompasses any intimate partnership, relationship, family relationship, all of the things, because what we now see more and more of, here's an example outside of marriage, partnership, boyfriend, girlfriend, all the things, is we have a high number of adult children abusing their parents, right?
Okay, yeah.
So we want to expand that definition, not just to include romantic relationships across the board. We want to expand that to be familial and everything else. So domestic encompasses all of familial stuff.
And I think something else that's important to note is violence or abuse. That term also has become a bigger umbrella to encompass more things. I've been, doing this about the same amount of time, 23 years, and it used to be physical contact. It used to be a battery upon a person was sort of what was required, but that definition as well has expanded. So how has that changed?
Thank goodness that has, because in my early days, I remember answering the crisis call at the shelter, right? 20 some years ago now. And there would be shelters in Georgia who would ask if you had a bruise. If you had a wound, right? And what we know is that violence begins before that physical incident. There's violence of words, there's violence, there's the manipulation, there's the emotional abuse that happens. Gaslighting is the popular term right now, but it's real. It's absolutely real. Manipulation, name calling, put downs. There could be calls at work that where you lose your job. Like
Yeah.
this violence is now expanded to include so much more.
Yeah.
Financial abuse,
Yes.
pet abuse, so much more than just an incident of violence against this other person.
Yeah, and coercive control, I think, is another thing,
Yes.
we see a lot of, and that's emotional abuse. And so I think when people are listening, to this, it's important to know that there's, protections in place, there's training for professionals, there's things that do cast a wide umbrella, because often in these conversations, even the public, people who may be victims, continue to think the old version, I have to have abuse, a bruise, I have to have been hit in some way, but it can be financial abuse, coercive control, all these different things. And so that's good that, that we have these expanded, things. I would say, in my experience, and you can tell me if you have a different experience, with the judiciary and some professionals in the system have not caught up with that training and with that knowledge.
Yeah. That's exactly where I was going to go next on this, is that there's definitely a different definition for the legal terms, right? As opposed to what's actually happening to you.
Right.
And for someone who's been through strictly finance, say just the course of control, no finger has been laid upon them in terms of a violent incident, physical violent incident. What we know is they can go into the legal system, judiciary, all of that, and be then confused about, oh, maybe I'm not a victim after all, because according to the definitions over here, it doesn't fit, right? So yes, I think that's true, and we need to be mindful that there are different definitions floating around here, and in what arena are we, and what can we expect in those arenas based on those definitions.
Yeah, I would say the broadest definition that we find is in the mental health, and so professionals are there, they're knowledgeable, they're ready to assist you, and sometimes the legal requirements are watered down because the law is slow to change.
Absolutely.
I can't even think in my mind of when the domestic violence laws in Georgia were updated or changed. Those are updates that we get, annually about different changes and procedures. And I can't think of anything, recent that would focus on, financial abuse. I will point out, I believe that they expanded it to the pet abuse and to...
I just read that.
For this year. So we did see that.
Wonderful.
Because that's a huge indicator, is that somebody may hurt a pet if, they're doing these other abusive things. So that was great to see. So using sometimes the legal system for these types of situations is sometimes an imperfect result. Yeah. And I think it gives a venue sometimes for the abuser to continue to abuse, particularly if they have an attorney that is just a megaphone for their vile stuff.
It's so true. And I think this is an important point, because many times in the lead up to someone leaving an abusive relationship, which is the most dangerous time to leave, right? That is the most dangerous time when you're considering that. It changes everything. It switches up the dynamic, and the abuser will absolutely start switching things up to get that person to stay, and extreme violence can happen. But what we know is that the threats in the lead up to that leaving, if a person is willing to use the legal system, the legal arena to further abuse someone, that threat has probably already happened in the course of the relationship.
Sure.
The person who's at risk knows, oh my gosh, this is what is going to end up happening for years potentially, which could be one of the reasons they don't leave.
Yeah.
Because if children are involved, if you're going to be drained financially, right, all of these things, then it's going to be pretty tough to go up against.
We hear a lot of things when certainly when meeting with a client for the first time that's been in these types of situations, these threats. You'll never see your kids again. I'm going to, ruin you financially. You'll never be able to get away from me. All these different things, which is legal abuse.
Yes.
Which isn't highly recognized. From a legal perspective, the terminology that we use is abusive litigation, which means repetitive lawsuits that have no purpose, that the judge, maybe keeps throwing out, but you have to go through all those processes in order to prove that. It isn't these threats that somebody is making that are often completely unfounded, not based in law or fact. They're really just to invoke fear.
Yes.
And so I have seen that post-divorce escalation of contempts, modifications, different things. And unfortunately, you have to react to those. You have to hire a professional. You got to show up. You have to go through the things of getting it dismissed. And so that's just another form of abusive behavior. So
Yeah.
sometimes being able to reroute that energy outside of the court system
Yes.
is
And
good.
which is, yeah, and which is where I step in sometimes as a high conflict, parent coordinator, co-parent counselor. Is sometimes what that will do is allow for a different way to handle it, right?
So
Yeah.
discuss for the people listening that, because there's a huge, I think, disparity of information about this as well. Tell everybody the difference between being a parent coordinator and being a co-parent counselor.
Yeah, parent coordinator is a lot of times I'm dealing with logistics. I'm dealing with how does someone understand the agreement, right, or the final order. And there can be confusion on dates or if they want to like swap times and things like that, where you can't change the key things like custody or the number of days parents have had the child or the children, things like that. But there's a lot to negotiate within that. And if they want to put that in the drawer, I hear so many saying that. So many attorneys will say that. I'll say that. If you want to put that in the drawer and never reference it again, yay, that's fantastic. But many times that is not what can happen.
Yeah.
So there can be lots of misinterpretation. So we spend a lot of time hashing that out.
Yeah.
Right. A co-counseling, co-parent counseling is really digging into some of the reasons why the communication is not there, or what are the roadblocks, what are the hurdles, emotional hurdles that are happening, why can't you communicate? Has there been a particular incident? Has there been a particular dynamic that we need to work through and talk about?
Yeah.
That maybe we can clear it out a little bit.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And so you focus on high conflict parents with the parent coordination and the other, but I want to focus on the parent coordination just for a minute because this is a very underutilized tool. And so as a parent coordinator, you can be appointed by the court. So generally there is an underlying action of some kind, potentially a divorce, and parties come to you to talk about all of those issues that I say are in the gray,
Yes.
that a fully functioning and healthy co-parenting couple isn't going to have a conflict about, but
Exactly.
high conflict people do. And high conflict, there's usually just one person.
It's
That
true.
sometimes there's two, which is
Sometimes, yay,
awful.
right?
No, but usually it's one person that's very difficult. And some examples I've seen are things we don't have in parenting plans that cause huge conflicts, like technology rules for kids,
Yes.
haircuts and
over
ear
again.
piercings.
I can't tell you how many discussions I've had about haircuts.
Yeah.
Like too many. Too many, right? It's
Yeah.
been too much. But yes, it's all of those little things that we don't even consider that co-parents can really get caught up on. So you want to try to have those discussions with someone outside of the courtroom, so we're not taking up the court's time.
Yeah,
right?
and a lot of times
With these.
it doesn't rise to the level of what you need to go to court, but it is really miring down this family in conflict.
It is.
And so, it may take you 6 months to go in front of a judge, and I don't really know what the procedure would be, like what type of motion you would file to be like the establishment of cell phone rules for 10-year-old child. The judge would be
Yes.
like, I don't have time for this. Like, I have
Yes.
these cases and a murder trial coming up and all these different things. Like, you guys need to sort this out, but they don't have that ability. So they come to somebody like you.
Yes, very much so. And sometimes, and I know we'll talk in another segment on personality disorders, sometimes one or both of those parents in a high conflict can exhibit personality disorder traits, or there can be a history of domestic violence that's happened between these two parents. So I think what they're trying to do, sometimes they come to me by themselves, right, on their own, and they're not referred by anyone, or it's been mentioned, or they figured it out, or they've read something like an Amicable Divorce Network, and they don't want to continue the dynamic and the pattern, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think it's important to know when you have domestic violence, when you have high conflict personalities, that parent coordination is a tool for dispute resolution that keeps people out of court, and they can meet with you on Zoom. They're not in the same space. They could even be in breakout rooms where even on Zoom they don't have to see one another.
Yes, which I do often.
Yeah.
And I always ask that question ahead of time, especially when there has been a history of domestic violence. Let's stay in the breakout rooms, and I'll shuttle back and forth between the two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so another aspect of parent coordination that's different is sometimes you can be vested with arbitration authority, which is the ability
Yes.
to make a decision. So you may act like a mediator for a little while, try to get them to reach a decision, but it can come to a conclusion without going to court.
Absolutely, which saves time and money for everyone, right? So,
Yeah.
which is a reality. It's an important aspect. But I think also what it does in using a parent coordinator is that it gives the parents some autonomy about what's happening, and they get to decide, okay, what's in the best interest of our children here. But hopefully that's where we can get to, right?
Yeah.
And I think they know best when they're in this good space, having these good conversations, hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's what we're doing.
Yeah. I mean, at a minimum, anything that we can check off the list that doesn't go to a judge is a win for everybody.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree completely.
And so it's important if you're looking at parent coordination to definitely find somebody that has domestic violence training.
Agreed.
Like Tori. Tori has a background in mental health and also has elevated, I would say, certifications in domestic violence for mediators and parent coordinators, which is, offered something that you want to look at. What is, how would a mediation benefit a situation that involves domestic abuse?
Back in the day when I first started, which I feel like is literally back in the day, 20 years ago, is that we didn't recommend in the
Right.
DV world, we did not recommend mediation because there wasn't this overhaul that had happened, and particularly here in the state of Georgia, about taking into account the safety measures for domestic violence, intimate partner violence, and what are all the things we need to make sure are being taken care of, right? Because it was in the same room back in the day, the whole thing, both people. Now, the reason I think we recommend in the DV IPV world, and intimate partner violence, IPV is intimate partner violence. In that world, we're now saying this may benefit you profoundly because you never have to see the abuser, you never have to be in the same room, and you get to voice what you want and need for the future in a completely different way,
And it's
right? Than if you
confidential.
were, it is confidential and it's remarkable. So all of that together, I think, is a great environment
So
for,
again, yeah, in these
yeah,
situations, the parties would be kept separate if it's on
yes,
Zoom. And so you could be even in another state and participating in a separate
yes,
breakout room to resolve these differences. In Georgia, where situations occur where people must be in person, maybe there's a technology issue, those mediations are held at a courthouse so that all the parties and everybody have to go through security
yes,
and go through a metal detector. And so again, in separate rooms, in caucus, and often when I do these at a courthouse on separate floors, people
fabulous.
are sometimes brought in separate entrances in those extreme situations. But since COVID, Zoom has been the default.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It works.
Yeah. You
It's
could be
terrific.
sitting anywhere.
Yeah, it's true and safe and unknown if you need to, which
Yeah.
is fabulous. Yeah.
And a concern I hear often when I'm dealing with victims of domestic abuse is that the person who is the abuser will sort of take over a process like parent coordination or mediation. That's a concern. And secondly, that they are so charming that they will be able to charm the mediator, parent coordinator. And so people think that this will be absolutely unproductive. How would you address those concerns that are legitimate that people may have?
They are. They are legitimate. I find that individual sessions are helpful for that. And in breakout rooms and giving equal time to both sides helps me as a parent coordinator. That's one of the main things. But I think time is your friend on this when you're a parent coordinator for
Yeah.
me, is that the longer I'm involved with these two people, the more I'm going to see who they are. And so that's why, in terms of parent coordination, usually say like 3 to 6 sessions isn't going to do much.
Right.
I'm not going to see much in that of the real patterns that are coming out with someone. But give me longer with them and it will show.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's important to know in either process, parent coordination or mediation, you can provide to the parent coordinator or mediator supplemental information as well.
Yes.
So if that is text messages that maybe show some communication, photographs, whatever it is, you are allowed to provide that to show context.
Yes.
And also, most people in this space, you have 20 years experience and I'm similar, like also it's not our first rodeo.
No. And you just wait it out for a minute and you can get a vibe. And I know that sounds kind of
Yeah, sounds kind of
Woohoo!
arbitrary, woo
It
woo, but
does.
yeah.
It does sound woo-woo, but it's true.
Hmm.
You begin to recognize this over time. The other thing that's important with me as a parent coordinator is I usually ask for permission to be part of our family wizard to
Yes.
see how
Hmm.
communication is happening. So I'm always peeking in there
Yeah.
randomly, and I think that also shows me
Yeah.
how someone is communicating, gives me lots of information.
And if you're not familiar with our Family Wizard, this is a tool that is great for these high conflict
Yes.
cases where parties share children. And so this is an online tool where parties don't have to text one another directly. They actually text on the portal. So a professional like
Mhm.
Tori can read and see those communications. Shared calendar has
Yes.
secure video chat now, so an abusive parent can have protected protected for the child type communication. And it has
Hmm.
lots of other interesting features like geo check-in, so if somebody's saying,
Yes.
oh well, you never pick up this child on time, you can
Hmm.
literally drop a pin. And clients of the Amicable Divorce Network do get 30% off our Family Wizard, so if that's something you're interested in, please let us know. So I just want to
It's a
point that
great
out. So
tool.
yeah, and
It's a
it's
great
it's
tool.
probably the top level high conflict
I agree.
domestic abuse tool if you're having to share a child, with somebody, if that's the situation you're in.
Yeah, fabulous tool. Tone meter on there if you
Yeah.
need it in terms of how you're communicating. It will run it through that
Oh
to
yeah,
approve it or
that is a great
disapprove
tool.
it.
Yeah. Do you
It
really want to?
is.
And they just came out with something I think where it'll actually reword it for the person to say,
Love
let's
it.
say this a little better because AI. And also something else is it scrapes data off of photographs. So if you want to send a graduation
Excellent.
picture of the child, it doesn't have metadata on it to show it, location, date, time, all that stuff that an iPhoto has.
I
So
love that.
yeah, so lots of things that people don't know about that really do address a lot of concerns. Their passion is helping people in this difficult space, and so it's a great tool. But
Excellent.
yeah, just something that's out there for people. Something that also, when you're utilizing the court system, that's a danger is you will have a date and time that you have to physically appear in a courthouse.
Hmm.
And so the abusive person will know where you're going to be and when, and that it can be an actually very dangerous situation.
I think one of the most dangerous times when you have been apart and there's been that they've left, the at-risk party has left, because sometimes people will wait in the parking lot,
Yeah.
follow you in. I can't tell you how many times you're seated out in the public space and you're there together.
Yeah.
So just know in those moments you can have a legal advocate or an advocate with a domestic violence IPV shelter who's been trained to accompany you to any legal proceedings, mediation, whatever it might be. You can also ask for a bailiff to escort you in. So don't forget those things
Yeah.
and request a separate room, I think, to sit in. Those types of
Yeah.
safety measures are
Yes,
important.
don't be afraid to ask for the things that will make you feel safe.
Yes.
And so courthouses are surrounded with police officers and security. And so it's fine to ask one of those individuals to escort you to the courtroom, to your car, to be present with you, and call ahead of time so you can make sure that they're properly
Good.
staffed if you need that. And this should all be available to somebody to make them feel safe. I think the next thing that I see happen is it is a contested and adversarial process. And so
Yes.
often a victim has to take the stand and continue to tell their story and convince a stranger judge of it while being subject to cross-examination. And unfortunately, we have, a member of the bar that's hired by the abuser has to be a zealous advocate for their
It's
clients.
true.
And
It's true.
some
That's
are
the job.
incredibly zealous and unsensitive to domestic abuse and believe what their client is saying, or,
Yeah.
just still make that charge. And that can be a re-victimization of sorts.
Yes, it can. And so many times in terms of my therapy practice, I'm sitting with clients who are survivors who are going up against their abusers. And so many times as a therapist, what I'm doing is, are you ready for this moment? Because it's going to be one of the most difficult re-victimizing moments. And
Yeah.
so it's getting them into a place, right, where they feel empowered enough to tell their story from a different perspective, right? From one of strength, from one of telling truth to power, one of, being authentic, right? And asking for what you need, and that this is one step in the journey. So yes, it can be horribly re-victimizing, terribly so. And I think it's one reason mediation is marvelous is because you don't necessarily get into that, right?
Right.
You don't have to get into those details. But if you have to be in the courtroom, that's what I'm doing on the therapy side,
Yeah.
is trying to prep a client for that moment. Yes, because it
Yeah.
can be devastating.
And if you're in mediation or parent coordination, again, you have that private opportunity with the
You
mediator or
do.
parent coordinator to explain the situation very candidly and fully and be heard and,
Hmm.
get all of that out, because there are rules of evidence. And so you may be
Yes.
saying something and there's an objection, and that can't get into evidence in a court setting. And so it is very different. So there may be people listening to this who are in a domestic abuse situation and are looking at getting out. What sort of safety planning do you recommend that they undertake?
For getting out, for getting away, I would absolutely recommend you call your nearest shelter, wherever you're at around the world, wherever it might be. Call your closest domestic violence IPV shelter. That will get you in touch with some people so that you can do some safety planning. And if you're needing to leave, to coordinate the
Yeah.
leaving. I can remember my first crisis call that I took, starting off at the shelter, and it took probably a week or two to help this person leave and get away. We had to plan and coordinate that long.
Yeah.
So having somebody else who's there with you, helping you through the process, I would gather important documents and information, have them in some place, get copies, have them with you on your person, in your car, somewhere else with someone who is safe. Carry your cell phone, have it always charged. Carry your keys with you all the time in case you have to leave rapidly, hurriedly. I would have friends and family know your whereabouts. And if they can't find you or you don't show up where you're supposed to show up, that they're going to call and go, okay, hey, where are you? Okay, that
Right.
kind of thing. So the more people who kind of know, the better, because there's this watch happening, right? Changing how you go home, go to work, all of the things, like switching up and don't do the same drive home, especially post leaving,
Right.
right? I would pack a bag. I
Yeah.
would have a go bag
Yeah.
in your car or somewhere safe.
Have your
Yes.
medication.
Yes, so important. Any medical documents, insurance documents, things like that.
Yeah.
Checking account information so you have all that with you.
And if
Yes.
you can't take your pet where it is that you're going, do make sure that you have somebody that you are
Yes.
safely putting the pet with, and reach out and rely upon those people who can keep your confidence and love you and support you and can help you with this journey. There
Yes.
are domestic violence shelters all over the world, all over the United States. The domestic violence hotline is 1-800-799-SAFE. 1-800-799-7233. And
Yes.
if you are looking at leaving a situation, pursuing a divorce, do a little bit of homework on the people that you're building your team with and see that they have those domestic violence certifications.
Good.
Attorneys can have this as well, and that will be important for them to be able to support you, your mediator, your parent coordinator, and make some good moves there to help you get out of the situation. So any parting words, Tori?
I think you keep mentioning the pets. I think it's a key point. Here in the state of Georgia, where we are, there's a group called Ahimsa House. It's an important group. They will help you leave. Many, many times is one of the key reasons people don't leave.
Yeah.
It's because they don't want anything to happen to their pets. And if you mention in Georgia, in particular, I'm not sure about other states, check is that if you mention your animal is an emotional support animal, we are required to take that animal in with you.
Okay.
Should not prohibit you leaving.
Gotcha.
So super
Yes.
important.
Yes, definitely.
Good.
So if people are listening and they would like to reach out to you and utilize their services, what is the best way for them to reach you?
You can, my website is toriowens.work, or you can reach me at Tori Owens. Wait a minute, what is my Tori Owens at mac.com? I was like, wait a minute, what is my email?
You don't email yourself?
Yes, I don't. Tori Owens at mac.com.
Thank you. And if you're driving
Yes.
and didn't get a chance to write that down, please save this episode.
Yes.
It'll be in the show notes and you can reflect back and get that information. Tori, thank you for all you do to help individuals, train our professionals, and make the world a better place.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. Right back at you.